This is Zettelcast, brought to you by readers, writers, thinkers, and teachers from LiLLiPub, along with our partners in thought, our Zettelkastens. In this show, we share discoveries that our Zettelkastens have shown us.
There you go.
And compare notes on how we're using this marvelous invention in our creative work. Thank you for joining us.
All right, Brooke.
Let's do it again.
All right.
Episode 71, The Box of Memories.
Welcome to Zettelcast number 71. I'm Mel Jeffcoat, and I'm hosting today. Today, we are just going to have a discussion about the intersection between memory, and there's a lot of different ways we could take that, and the Zettelkasten. So with that wide open field, who would like to start?
Okay, if nobody else wants to, I will. Okay, for me, Zettelkasten and memory functions on two vastly different planes. On the one plane, it's my taglines that I put on all of my cards function as memory devices for everything that's on the card. And I continue to be amazed as I look through my index and I see index entry after entry and card after card after card comes into my mind. And I never dreamed that that would be possible or that those phrases would linger for that length of time, but they do. So that's one area. And the other area is that it remembers what I was interested in, what I was fascinated, what caught my attention in the past. Now that I've had my Zettelkasten for probably just about 4 years, it's shaping up a history of my intellectual life, if you will, over that time frame. And it's exciting to see how my thoughts have grown and developed and changed over that period. So in that case, it is a memory for me. And a card will come out of the box and it will bring back not just the topic of the card, but what my life was like at the time and what was bothering me at the time. What was I thinking about? What was challenging me? So much of my life comes back with the cards. It's just a complete surprise. And that's my contribution.
I want details. So you said that you've seen, your thought process or your thoughts themselves develop and grow. Can you give some examples?
Well, my greatest interest ongoing for all this time has been the character traits. But there was a time when I didn't know about the character traits or I didn't have the concept of the character traits. And I was interested in the Zettelkasten, and thought that I was going to write a book. Well, I started it, and I would hopefully to get back to it, called Jonathan and the Dinosaur Notebox. And the idea was that with that book, I wanted to tease middle school kids into wanting a Zettelkasten. My goal with the book was to give them just enough of a taste of it that if they went back to the start of the book and read through, they would actually be able to piece together how to create one. But I didn't want to sit down and tell them, this, you do this, then you do this, then you do this. So that meant they would have to be really interested in having one to be able to dig it out. But I wanted it to be there if they did dig it out. And so everything that I was thinking about was the Zettelkasten. So I thought to myself that even before I got to that story, it was about my niece who had stopped writing. And I wanted to see what could I do to help her write, since she only had little slivers of time raising 3 boys and homeschooling them. And I thought, well, the Zettelkasten will be the answer. Little did I know that Victoria was actually going to write a whole book on it, but I attempted a fledgling layout of, well, what if you did this, this, and this? And her reaction to that was, well, no, it won't work because you've got to remember the emotional state that you were in. And by the time you get yourself back into the emotions of the story, your sliver of time is gone. So I thought, oh, darn, oh, well. Well, at least I can teach middle school kids to want a Zettelkasten. And so my thoughts went completely there. But somewhere along that process of trying to create my characters and uh, joining in a number of influences from different directions, like at least 6 different directions. I can't give you the whole history of that. I began to be exposed to the concept of virtues being taught as a positive disciplinary approach for elementary school kids. And I ordered a copy of the book that was the guide for the elementary school teachers on how to teach the virtues. And I thought, I can use those as a guide for creating a character. But if a character, you don't just want virtues, you got to go the whole spectrum. This is goody two shoes, but you want a real living character. So you got to have both, got to have the whole spectrum. So instead of virtues, I called it character traits. And I wrote a whole book about it. So, but so then I was just teaching the character traits as a way to develop characters, but my niece stumbled upon the fact that the memory response lines that I use in trying to remember what character trait you gave your character and why was sufficient to bring the emotions of the story back. So I had inadvertently solved her problem. So that was just a whole changing trend. And then from then on, I started writing about it seriously. I created my 35-week course on YouTube on, how to work with them, and then later my book, Writing with Emotion. And now my newsletter. So that was the evolution.
Out of that whole thing that you just took us through, that trip down memory lane, I liked best the part where you talk about framing your kids' book in a way that made it so they would have to dig, they would have to want it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing was being, handed to them, nor shoveled to them. It was, but it was there in plain sight.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was really nicely done.
Thank you. It's not written yet. I mean, it's underway, but it isn't completed.
I also thought it was interesting and apropos that the whole question that you were struggling to answer for your niece was about memory. How to encapsulate and bring back the emotions.
Yeah.
And that's a memory issue. So
Yeah. Yep.
that by itself is completely on topic.
Have you observed distinguishing features of your taglines that make them more effective at bringing back a whole card than others?
Oh, definitely. If taglines that just repeat information that I got from a given source on the tagline will bring that information source back, but it won't bring the creative juices back. It may not bring back my response, for example. But it is effective at bringing back the information. So I like to always hint at my reaction to it as well. Um, Sometimes that can just be done with a choice of verbs instead of is, conceded, or supposed, or discovered. And by the different color in which, with just a short sentence, you can change a certain word that gives you the color that conveys the reaction that you had. Stupidly. Use an adverb.
Right. So the memory is the lens because that's how you saw the thing.
Yeah.
It's your interpretation of what you saw, and that ties back to Victoria's experience collection.
Oh, yeah.
right? And to your take on the experience collection, a la the character traits.
Mhm.
And all of that became part of this thing that I did over this weekend, trying to figure out how it is that what did I do step by step? How did I do step by step? This piece that I ended up workshopping this weekend. Because I read it a couple times myself and I thought, wow, that's really good. How did you do that? How can I do that again? I want to be able to do that again. So I ended up I created this GPT. I am not a programmer. The closest thing I came to it was a Perl program that I wrote that did save my job one time. So that was pretty good, you know. But it definitely saved my bananas. So that was nice. So maybe I have a kind of a programmer's mind, some kind of way, you know, some kind of way. But the idea was this GPT allows you to create your own version of Chat GPT. And so you can bend it your way, however you want it. And so what I wanted it to do was to tell me, help me find out, help me dig out how I had written this piece.
Mhm.
So that I could in turn do it again at will. Do it again at will. And so it has 6 parts. And one of the first things in part one, it asked, all right, go find something that you have observed.
Mhm.
Find something that you've observed, which is Victoria's thing,
Mhm.
you know, and look into that observed thing. So it's something in public that you just walk out in the street and you see, or you pull it from the news. So I thought, okay, let me find something. I mean, I read the little lecture that they gave beforehand, and I said, all right, I'm armed with this. Let me go out and find something. And so I found a Me Too article. A Me Too article about that this woman produced when she was 35 years old, 3 days ago, about an incident, a Me Too incident that happened when she was 16.
Mm.
Right? So my question was, what happened in her head, right? What happened that she would publish this thing now?
Mhm.
Where did she go? What was the connection? And so it became something in her memory, something somewhere made this thing come back to her. So I wanted to, I asked my I'm asking my own GPT, was that the right grist for this mill? Was that correct? And it said, yeah, that's what we're looking for. You have to pull out all the sensory pieces and connect it up. So memory equals lens, and it's about interpreting what we see, and it's about writing down in our Zettelkasten markers so that we can get back to these memory places. You know, so it's all a self-feeding circle, you know.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's what I did. I that came out kind of convoluted, but hopefully you understood what I was saying about the relationship between our observations and memory and how we shape what we see, what we observe, and those observations become input to stories.
Mhm.
So uh yeah.
That why now question, very powerful.
Mhm.
Did your GPT suggest that to you, or is that
No,
your own?
Yeah.
that was me trying to I was going through trying to find stories or news news events or things in the news, things that have been published to find out what would be a good anchor
Uh-huh.
for one of these stories.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And I came across this and I'm thinking because it's the picture that was on the article didn't look anywhere near 16 years old,
Uh-huh.
right? So I'm saying now what happened here?
Uh,
What happened? And since it's all about um she rem- she had to have remembered something,
uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
That would bring it out. I mean, the woman is 35 years old now. This happened when she was 16.
Mhm.
That's almost 20 years. What happened?
Mhm. Yeah.
So and that's the on ramp for me to
Yeah.
write my speculative
Yeah.
narrative.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. I love that concept of using memory as a lens with which to see other things. That that's a really, really interesting take.
But that's when we do that automatically.
Yeah.
It's when I look at something, that's why they always talk about the eyewitnesses,
Uh-huh.
right? Everybody has a different take on what happened. They were all looking at it at the same time, but
Yeah.
because everybody was looking at it through their lenses,
Yeah.
they all came away with a different story
Yeah.
of what happened.
Yeah.
So we do this. This is part of our human take on things, you
Mhm.
know. Uh, but yeah, memory, the entries that we put. That's why those memory prompts that you put on your those the taglines. That's why they're so powerful. They bring that whole memory back. Aha.
Mhm. Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're transported, you're right back there,
Yeah. Yeah.
immediately. So yeah, that's memory as a lens. We just, uh
Yeah. Also, memory as a time machine, because you just said we'd be transported back there, and where you are, and you kind of for a moment you're dwelling as you were at that time. Doesn't last a long time for me, but it's a very interesting moment when that happens.
mhm, yeah,
I think we have that phrase in our language, it takes you back. And it's
yeah. So that's
A
my
couple of ways that
contribution.
I
Well,
thought about this assignment. I mean, one of the things that you wrote, Mel, in kind of framing the discussion, where it was not necessarily only about memory, but also about how your mind works.
uh-huh.
So, well, what got me into the Zettelkasten was my foray into memory techniques, which uh, almost the entire path was through Anthony Metivier. And Anthony Metivier has used and talks about the Zettelkasten.
mhm,
But I started out having read a lot of books and feeling disappointed in how fuzzy my recall was of those books that I had read. So I looked into the memory techniques in order to figure out how can I do a better job of that. And so I have learned memory techniques and I have used them. So, for example, in a couple of episodes ago, where I talked about Nancy Klein's thinking environment, that's the second thing I chose to memorize. Now, some people who get into memory techniques really love the idea of just memorizing reams and reams of stuff and being able to just, call it forth all the time. They can quote any line of Shakespeare, or they know back every verse of the Bible, or that sort of thing. My desire, and it actually crystallized when I, by with those first forays into memorizing things, it was more about what are the things that I want to have in my thinking environment, in my literal thinking environment. I want what conceptual frameworks do I want to be able to just whoosh, dial into?
Yeah.
And Nancy Klein's thinking and 10 components of the thinking environment was one of those things. And it has really served because it's not like I say, okay, I'm going to assume the thinking environment now. It's just that those concepts wave their hands when something related comes up, and I'm able to make those connections, and there's like open arms for a whole lot of different things. So now the Zettelkasten is probably the answer that I was looking for in terms of how can I do a better job of remembering the books that I read. And using the Zettelkasten with selectivity, you go deep with the ones that you think, okay, this is a keeper. This is a read, reread, reread, read, reread book. How can I really just like chew and digest this thing? And for that, you'll reach for Mortimer Adler's techniques, and as they're supplemented with the Zettelkasten as I think, a better way of keeping it and connecting it to all the other things that you're interested in, Zettelkasten just works beautifully for that. And so my Zettelkasten is a complement to the memory techniques in that it's a feeder system. The things that I am reading that I think, okay, that is like that I've raised that to the level of the 10 components of the thinking environment as something I want to be able to have that readily available to me. And so, Mel, some of the stuff that you explore in your newsletter, it is at that level for me. I want to be able to have, without having to reach for a prop, Lil's thinking tools in
Yeah.
order to sit in a room with my eyes closed and wander around in the hills and valleys of that way of thinking. So the things that I choose to memorize, I keep a record of them in the Zettelkasten
Oh.
in case I need to refresh my memory. And I work them out in a particular memory journal, but it's so much easier to create a bib card of the memory journal and to create main cards for the things that I'm going to use. And the other stuff that I do, because you need materials to work with when you're memorizing. If I use the memory palace, I need lots of different places where I might choose. And Anthony Metivier always recommends using the alphabet as your peg. So, for example, LiLL has a thing called question T, or the figure T,
Diagram T. Yeah.
figure T. And I'm memorizing figure T in a memory palace from the Tully Health Center.
Ah.
And question A, or I'm sorry, figure A, there's the Acme Grocery. And so I have taken the time, and it's the sort of thing that, again, Metivier recommends you do when you're just sitting around, and you might as well just do something. Uh, think of some more of those. What are some other places I've been where, Dr. Denker's office? That's a D memory palace. Just sketch it and file it away. So I've got those there. And also because I'm reading more and I'm in some cases getting more of a sense of the author by virtue of reading more closely, authors become people who can be figures
Oh,
in the memory palace.
yeah.
So I don't really even have to, it's not like I could draw a picture of Mortimer Adler with any fidelity, but it's good enough that I know in my own head, I recognize my own memory image of Mortimer Adler. So if I need an M, something that begins with more or whatever, then he can serve to help be the beginning of a peg or something in the middle, some phrase where I need more. So that's how it's become an adjunct in memory. Now, the other thing in terms of, sorry to go on so long, the other thing in terms of how my mind works, because I'm keeping the Z log, which is an additional time-based index, it's very clear to me that I go in streaks. And why would that have been a surprise? Because I go in streaks. For as long, and I go in streaks and I am impelled by deadlines. And that is not my favorite quality about myself, but I have to admit it. That's how it works. So if there's a fusion writing coming up and I'm a little close to being able to knock a story for Roanoke out, well, I get going and I get moving and I do that thing. And then as I'm writing, I learn new stuff and I make a bunch of cards and I have more things to file. And then several weeks might go by where I haven't been driven by that deadline. And so, for whatever reason, I'm more in a kind of just passive mode. It's how my mind works. And the, the rhythm inherent in my use of the Zettelkasten is mimicking that.
Mhm. Wow. I love your use of the memory palaces. I'm kind of fledgling in that area. It doesn't come naturally for me, but where I've used it, it's been valuable. Um, I'd like to use so even though I'm nowhere near at your level of expertise, I like to use the letters of the alphabet in pegging, but I like to use them as I'm not for which place, because I don't have enough different distinct place, but to make a familiar place unique by adding my I used an alphabet of saints um, along with the picture that I have that saint doing the action where I store the thing. And then that way I reuse the same memory palaces over and over again.
Yeah, people worry about whether they will get confused.
Mhm.
And you've got a disambiguating feature that
Mhm.
prevents you from being confused.
Yeah.
Um, one of the things that struck me when your niece said that won't work because
Uh-huh.
she may have been right, but I have started to react with sort of like this to that phrase. That won't work because
Uh-huh.
there's lots of ways that we can talk our out of something or talk ourselves out of something before we've
Yeah.
even given it the first try.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, So, yeah, I'm just getting in there and finding out how your own ability to use memory imagery and not worrying about solving every problem you haven't run into yet is, if I listen to Anthony Mattivi, that is the sort of thing that he has had to say 1,000 different ways.
Yeah.
Mm.
But I should say that a couple of weeks later, she phoned me so excited to tell me how that memory response phrase, um, which I just thought would remind you of why you gave that character trait to your character, turned out to be all she needed to get back into the emotions of the story, even though she wasn't writing anything about the event that caused her to write that, give that character that trait.
Yeah.
Just the combination of traits was enough to, reading those phrases was enough to trigger back right where she was emotionally. And that was the gold. So she was the one who said, hey, and by the way, I discovered a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow.
Yeah, and good for her for trying it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
relating it back to me, because then I knew I had something more than what I realized.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you gave it all to us.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Merci.
But we each bring things, because I didn't really mean to digress and bring it back to me, because I just wanted to make mention that my niece didn't leave it there.
Yeah.
And that was my only intent. Because I think what you're saying is important, and I'd rather underscore that. Um, so.
Well, what you were saying, Julianne, is a really good transition into what I had prepared for today, because the time period that Ramon Lull lived in was the late Middle Ages, and he was in sort of a transitory transition period where in the earlier part of the Middle Ages, they the monks were literate, but they also had very little access to new books. Very expensive, very difficult to create new books. Travel was difficult, so trade was hard. So they used memory techniques extensively in the monasteries. They had their books, but they also memorized their books. Um, and they developed techniques in their memory for their memory exercises that were actually not really based off of the classical techniques that we know about, like the memory palaces. Um, and I'll talk about a little bit more about that in a minute, but so we had this tradition of memory techniques being used with literacy, but in Lull's time period, there is more travel, there was more economic activity, and not too long after, the printing press was developed, which really made things take off. So books and writing implements and utensils were becoming more and more affordable. And so people started actually writing down the things that they had stored in their memories so that they could give them to other people. Um, the index was invented not long before, in Lull's lifetime, not long before he started writing. And I think I see that whole intellectual ferment there leading directly to the Zettelkasten, because there's been centuries and centuries of people working out how do we store information and how do we make it accessible? How do we find things again? How do we make connections? And they've been trying, all sorts of different ways to do that, memory techniques and writing techniques, and the Zettelkasten is where that intellectual technology is right now. um, so this was all triggered by I finally got a hold of an academic book called The Memory Book by Mary Carruthers. I've seen it quoted and cited in other works that I've read, but she is specifically studying medieval memory techniques.
Hmm.
And I haven't finished the book, but what I've read so far has been really interesting and very inspiring. So instead of memory places, palaces, they tended to use tables, uh, table diagrams to memorize things that they would actually sometimes even draw out on their parchment, and then they would memorize. And so I was getting very excited by reading her techniques and the information she was giving. And I'm like, okay, I'm finally seeing a point to all this memory stuff. Because before I'd been like, well, it seems kind of interesting, but why do I want to put the time into it, right? Um, and so I'm like, you know what? I have something I could memorize. I could memorize all of the information from Ramon Lull.
Oh, yeah.
Because if I commit that to memory, then it'll be more easy to manipulate it and find the connections and understand it. So I started with, there's 13 sections in both of his books. They correspond, both of the books about what we're studying. Ars Brevis is just Cliff Notes version, and then there's the really involved version, but they follow the same format. So I memorized the 13 sections. That was easy. But the next thing to memorize was the alphabets, which are his sets of 9 concepts in different subjects, um, that they all are lettered B through K. And I've been trying to memorize those since I started this, and they just are not stick very well. I get some of them, but not to the point where I could memorize them. So I made myself a table, which
Oh,
has all of the ones. It actually
oh,
has 2 that we haven't covered in the newsletters, the virtues and the vices. But and those symbols there are symbols that I have created to help us remember and understand the different concepts. So I made this table, all of the different groups, all of the letters, and I was able to memorize them, but I was only able to memorize them sequentially. So I could go through all of the B's and all the C's and go, through them, and I could go down all of the columns, but I did not have random access memory. Like if you ask me, what is the question for G, I would have had to go down through them to figure out what that was. So I'm like, all right, I need to add more information. And this is where more of the typical memory techniques come in. I assigned an animal to each of the letters. So I've got a bat, a cat, a dog, elephant, fox, goat, horse, iguana, and kangaroo. Um, and then for each of the subjects, there's figure A, figure T. The questions are also called the rules. So I used R for that one. The virtues and the vices, and the subjects. I assigned an article of clothing for each of those. And then I spent a really fun time with a graphical AI generator in Canva, creating images that had these animals wearing these pieces of clothes, and then I added the symbols to them. So
They're t-shirts.
yes, well, um, they've got an ascot, which is a kind of tie, a trousers, robe, vests, and then the vests are either green or red, depending on if they're virtues or vices, and then shoes. So I've got, here, I'll pull up some examples. So here is a horse with an ascot, and he's right next to the symbol for virtue.
virtue.
So
Oh my, what does this stand for then? Oh, no, you got it on a ring.
yes.
Okay.
So the ascot stands for figure A, the
Okay.
horse stands for letter H, and the
Okay.
intersection of those
Horse,
two
yeah.
is virtues.
Virtue. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
if I can remember that image as a whole, then I've got all of the information to be able to have random access memory for the whole table.
Oh, wow.
And I've got 54 of these things that I created. Here's
Oh, okay.
an
Beginning
elephant.
Look at
Yes.
him.
And it's
and
an
trousers. So
elephant
it's figure
wearing trousers.
T,
Yep.
letter E, beginning.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, wow. And okay. Wow.
So I have been playing with these cards for the last few days, and
Oh,
I've almost gotten to the point where I've got random access memory for the whole chart.
oh.
So it's really a powerful way of working with things.
Are you
And
going to be putting this in your next newsletter?
not the next one, but coming up, yes.
Coming
We'll
up.
definitely talk about it. Yeah.
So we'll have to make sure we let people know where they can subscribe to your newsletter.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes. Well, there is a link now on meljeffcoat.com to
well,
directly to the newsletter.
and
Um,
will you put an information in the library on LiLLiPub so that LiLLiPub members can have just click?
yes, I can do that, certainly. Yes. So, I didn't have to use the AI generated image, I could have just worked in my memory, imagining these things. I could have sketched out drawings. That would have taken a lot longer though. Um, but I really had a lot of fun generating these and then putting them together.
Yeah.
And then I added the color afterwards because that would have
Yeah.
been complicated. Um,
But yeah, but the fun that you were having added to the
mhm.
stickiness.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, before I even printed them out and put them on the cards, I already had a lot of them memorized
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
just from working with them and putting them
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Wow, excellent. So how long we gonna have to wait?
You know what? I'll move it up. I'll put that in the next one after the one I'm currently working on.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you have uh, a technique for associating the symbol with these things? Have you got, or you're just remembering that the elephant looked like that with next to the
Well,
beginning?
wherever possible, I tried to make it make sense. Like, here's the first one. Um,
that wearing
so
mascot.
yeah, a bat wearing an ascot, and the circle is the symbol, and I've got him inside the circle, so it's become part of
Cool.
it.
Yeah.
So where possible, if I could put things inside the symbols, I would do that. Let's see. There, I
Okay.
got another good example with the horse. Um, so I created, this is a new symbol you haven't seen, but charity, that little symbol down there with the heart.
Uh-huh.
Um, so it looks like the horse is getting a treat.
Yeah.
So that makes it easy to remember.
All right. So let's do this one. The horse is letter H. The V is the vest is a virtue, and the symbol is the symbol for charity.
Yes.
Okay.
And I also I used the same animals for both virtue and vices, but I had them pointing opposite directions.
Okay. And
So
with
if they
red
were
and green.
yeah, and the red and the green for the vest as well.
Let's see. Can
Um,
we see a vice?
sure. Um, I'll use the same horse. So
Oh,
here's the horse with the red vest.
oh,
We have an
Get that
angry
bit.
bear for ire.
ire. Anger. Okay. Yeah. Ire. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And where possible, I use the traditional animal symbolism for these vices,
Uh-huh.
as far as I could discover them, like a frog for avarice, which is interesting. I hadn't thought of that before.
Frog. Why would the frog be avarice?
I don't know, but that's what came up when I was searching for symbols for that.
Huh. Green
Not in
for the
every
frog.
culture. I mean,
Yeah.
there are other
Okay.
cultures that have frogs have, with different
Huh.
meanings, but apparently in
That's
or
interesting. Can't get enough of those flies.
yeah.
Wow.
So it's been a very fun journey. I'm definitely looking forward to learning more of the specifically medieval memory techniques and figuring out how they transitioned into the written systems that
Yeah.
the written knowledge systems that we have been, we are the successors to with our Zettelkastens.
Yeah. And I'm fascinated, of course, which we did get to discuss in your last newsletter call, with the application of the logic system to topics of study.
Mhm. Yes.
Because it's nice memorizing the whole logic system, but then it's another whole layer to find out, well, okay, now how do you work it?
Yeah, yeah. What's the big so what? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, it's so great that you shared this story and especially that you had fun.
Yeah.
Because that's where the memory techniques really shine.
Mhm.
When you find your route into it that is playful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
What I did for figure T. I haven't done the species, so each of the figure T, they have different ways that they can go into it. But um, in the Tully Health Center, there's the Memory Palace is a waiting room that I know very well. And so there are three stations in the desk where people check you in. There's three stations along the wall, and then there's three stations along the far wall that I always see from the chair that I'm sitting in. And I have people in there instead of animals,
Uh-huh.
and they are people from a television series that I have watched a ton of called Taskmaster.
Oh.
And there's celebrity, they tend to be comics in Great Britain, with some people from Canada and the United States coming over as special guests. But it was very easy to find B through K. You know,
Oh.
it's Bob, it's Chris, and I see them, and I have seen enough of how they interact that they are alive for me. Um, but for like the questions that, your figure R, I guess, I have different people, and they are musicians whose names begin with those letters. So I've got BB King for
Mhm.
B, and I've got Clara Schumann for C, etc. And so that I haven't had them. I haven't put them to use yet. So it's still in the experimental stage to know whether it's going to work well to have different people in, just by virtue of like, oh, okay, well, I see it that it's Dolly Parton, so I know that I'm talking about the rules, as opposed to Daisy, where I know I'm talking about figure T.
Mhm.
Huh.
Nice.
But it's fun to see, these are fun to make once you get over the
Yeah.
hurdle. Doesn't it doesn't take that long uh, to just come up with nine things.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Yeah.
your system is very elegant.
Yeah. I like it a lot. Yeah. I'm finding that I'm memorizing them mostly through using them, especially the questions, because I'm trying to apply them to each of the 28, now 29 character traits. And so there's a lot of repetition. And so I'm getting to know them in my bones, so to speak, without ever having gone through the memory palace route. Although I do know that Metivier says that you use this as the starting point,
Yeah.
and then it disappears once you know them at that depth. You don't even think about where you originally stored them anymore. You just have them.
Yeah, and you're not memorizing them through rote, beat it into your head
Yeah,
memorization. You're using them.
I'm
So you're
employing them.
so
Yeah,
they they're experiential for you.
yeah. From it's like doing math problems, and then I know how to do all the different techniques in math because I just do so many problems. I was a math major. But,
Well,
but then what a different set of approaches because each of the four of us had something so different. Because I was talking about how the phrases work for me, and then Deb was how you can actually use memory as a way of looking at things. You brought up the memory palace and the techniques, and then Mel with his chart and the figures. I mean, what totally different takes on the same subject.
this has been a great discussion. Where can people join us for more discussion?
You can come to lillipub.org. It's where we hang out when we're not here in YouTube land. It's a spectacular value. It's still only $8 a month. Never know how long that'll last. And if you join us, that will be your price for life. The price will never go up on you. We've got great discussion groups. We've got our Roanoke project. We've got book clubs. We've got experience challenge. We've got fusion writing. There are just so many interesting corners in LiLLiPub. come on over and join us. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.